Hello, and welcome to the symplr Education Series webcast. Today's webcast is titled Accelerating Your Credentialing Career with guest speaker Donna Goestenkors. At the end of this session, we will have time for a formal Q&A, but feel free to ask any questions as they come to mind via the chat box located on the right side of your screen. You will be able to watch the archive of today's webcast and download its slides at symplr.com soon, and will receive notification via email. You will also receive your CE credits via another email. We are so pleased to have Donna as our speaker this month. I'm sure many of you know her, and I'd love to turn it over to her now.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Callie. And Callie, for some reason, I'm not able to advance the slide. Let me try one more thing. Oh, here we go. It's all on the operator, and that's me. So I'm glad to get started. Hi, everyone. That's me on your screen. Thanks for meeting with me today so I can use this webinar as a way to share with you what I am seeing in the field in a way that is impacting the practice of credentialing and how these changes will help you adjust, but even better, how you can take the lead in influencing the change within your organizations and in your careers. I so wish today we had the ability to talk voice to voice with one another so we could really learn from each other about other perspectives you are having and experiences that you have had within your careers or within your organizations, because things really are changing, and not in a bad way, but again, just to give you the heads up, to keep you in the know so we can be more in control of how we're going to manage information. This webcast really is here, and many of you have joined me over these many years I've been doing these webinars, and I really, really care about the livelihood of MSPs and credentialing experts. So whether you're new in the field or you're a very seasoned credentialing professional, I want to provide you with valuable information about how the medical staff services industry is changing relative to credentialing, and how you can be in the know to really fast-track your career so you can get noticed in a good way. As always, nothing comes without the support of others. So by way of symplr and Cactus, this webcast has been made possible. So thank you to our sponsors in that regard. How are we together, our sponsors as well as myself, what kind of information are we going to share in today's sessions? Well, really, I want to help you experience what the reality is today for the MSP credentialing professional, because of the diversification of position titles that I'm seeing out in the industry, where credentialing is being practiced, and the overall job knowledge and opportunities that continue to be expanded within our industry. And I also want to be able to speak truth with you through this webcast modality about the direction of potential credentialing career goals and how you can then be in control of your opportunities and making selections that really truly tap in to your passion. When we're looking at what's new in the field, I really want to help prepare you. So some of the low-hanging fruit that I want you to be aware of is, if you've not already experienced it, or maybe you've just really not had time to reflect because we're so busy every day just going through the motions and getting our work done. But understanding how important using automation is going to be in your daily practices within medical staff services, but really our focus today is credentialing in any capacity possible in how you're performing your credentialing practices. You want to make sure you're using automation. And again, there's no slide addressing this. So these are just some of the, again, low-hanging fruit things that I'm addressing with you in relation to what's new. The benefit of using automation and knowing that automation is making the verification pieces easier for us, it then behooves us as that credentialing person to be able to really study and analyze the information that we've collected. Even those of you who are working in credentialing verification organizations where, yes, I know you send out the verification request, you get that, and you place it into the electronic file or the paper file. This automation is allowing you to really be more thoughtful about the information that you're collecting. And for those of the credentialing professionals working in other environments, it really, again, is allowing us to be more thoughtful and to analyze the material that is coming to us before we pass this along to medical staff and administrative leaders. So more automation, our ability to more thoroughly vet and analyze red flags would be new things coming into our field. There's going to be more and more systemization of how we do our verifications. Last week, I did a program for the AMA about using our technologies, our available technologies, to automate how we are performing our verifications. So more organizations are going to be systemizing what that process looks like and finding the most reasonable sources to obtain those verifications. An example of systemization is CAQH, who has really been a leader in the managed care and that centralized application that is being used. They are now also going into the verification space. So you're seeing more and more automation and expansions in available resources that are here. So you're going to probably be seeing more potential software programs that will make our jobs become easier and easier. Another example of the automation component would be Skill Survey, where they have now automated the peer review verification process. It's no longer about sending an electronic letter, or even some of us are still sending the paper letter, but it's truly automating for the respondent as well as the applicant that entire peer review process. And then the last piece that I want to underscore for you by way of low-hanging fruit of how changes have been infiltrating the credentialing world is more specialization. So for you as the credentialing expert or the credentialing professional, you have opportunities where you can utilize aspects of your experience base and brand that as your area of specialization. And as we move into the webinar, I will certainly be giving you specific examples in that regard. And with anything, whenever we're offering new information, it's important for us to start with our baseline of information. So again, let's reinforce competence, because we as credentialing professionals, we need to be able to demonstrate our competence and how we're performing our credentialing practices. And credentialing truly is an aspect of project management. So as the management of a project, we want to make sure that we're understanding the aspects involved in the management of credentialing. So we as professionals, we sure want to understand why we're doing what we're doing. So that's where the theory comes into play. We want to be able to look at credentialing as a project, as an overall project, knowing we have all kinds of moving parts. We want to be able to systemize what our project looks like. And we, excuse me, and we systemize that through the development and following of our policies and procedures, available softwares that we use in performing our practices, and then targeting what verifications we want to use with our credentialing, in our credentialing process. So delineating what those look like, because what works for one organization may not work as effectively for another organization, and certainly we have specific expectations based upon the accreditation bodies that we work within, as well as the state regulations that we work within. But there are some areas of flexibility, so understanding those nuances within your organization is part of our competence, how we can communicate those things effectively to our medical staff and administrative leaders. We want to be able to produce evidence that our implementation of our project management is indeed accurate, and then be able to monitor the effectiveness of our project manager. And we do that through our measurement or auditing various aspects of our credentialing process, with always the goal being to improve our processes, improve our timeliness, improve the customer service or the physician practitioner experience. There is also a framework that's important for us as credentialing professionals to be aware of. And many of these, if you've participated in previous programs that I've presented, I'm not going to address all of these, but for the record, these, in my opinion, are the baseline of information, having an understanding of the framework about what your credentialing process looks like and includes, because the more we can put structure around our understanding, the more confident we are in communicating what those practices are to others. The three areas that I want to focus on for accelerating our credentialing careers has to do with understanding what core competencies should be a part of credentialing, just a very overarching understanding of the rules that drive our credentialing, and then the expansion of where credentialing is being performed, areas that you may not even have thought before existed, that you now have that opportunity to certainly expand and move into that space. All right, so let's move into the MSP core competencies. This formula, I think it's really important for us to talk about the formula, and I'm not going to go into blow-by-blow details, but have a good working knowledge of how we as MSPs, credentialing professionals, can attest to our competence. And it's really about the knowledge that we're acquiring, and this webinar is one example. Plus the skills that we learn every day on the job makes us better, more efficient, more effective in how we're performing our job. And then our ability truly to apply the knowledge and the skill that we have certainly acquired and practiced over these many, many years, or even just in a matter of a few short months. So that truly is our measurement. As I've described previously, there are three key buckets that everyone I encounter when I'm in the field, when I'm talking with people at the NAMS conference or various state conferences, that their competencies will fall into these three columns. The one we want to focus on, again, for today's program has to do with how efficient we perform our credentialing skills, because the more efficient we are, the more we will get noticed in a good way. The two core competencies that fall within this particular competence column would be credentialing management, which is what is the whole target for this particular webinar, but then again, right, technology. And as I mentioned, it's going to be so critical to understand that everything that we do really has to be driven through our technology and the practice of how we're automating. And the bottom line is every day we go to work, right? And we have to prove our value because healthcare is moving at such a pace, and we have to be able to demonstrate that we are on top of our game. So proving our value is really part of the experience that we have in competencies, in our ability to demonstrate our competencies. Now, when we look at credentialing, specifically the elements and the tasks that fall under credentialing management, I'm recommending to you that we have three primary areas that come under credentialing management. And again, you may, as I reveal these, you may have different perspectives, different experiences, but I'm talking to the masses out there. Credentialing management really centers around how effectively we apply all of our knowledge based upon requirements and how effectively we're able to obtain the verifications that are required in order for individuals to be making informed decisions. So there are three key areas that fall under this section of competence. And we're talking about initial applications, correct? We know that within credentialing, we're always going to have to manage an application. If we don't specifically do that, perhaps a team member is responsible for applications. The next core area would be reapplications. So we know anyone who's managing a credentialing project, we're going to have to deal with initial applications and we're going to have to deal with reapplications. And then the third component that I'm proposing that we think about as we're looking at credentialing management would be those expirable documents, licensure, malpractice insurance, your DEA, maybe you have a state-controlled substance, your board certification, ATLS, ACLS, whatever your organization or your criteria determine as expirables, that is going to be a really important aspect for us as credentialers to make sure that we manage that in the most effective way possible. In order for us to understand what it is we're managing, we have to understand what rules exist. And I'm not going to, again, go into the deep sentiment of all of the different rules. I'm going to talk to you more about the overarching, because this is leading into the career opportunities for MSPs and credentialing professionals. So we know that the government, through the Centers for Medicare, Medicaid Services, we know that they have expectations. If you're going to get federal dollars, you better follow what the conditions of participations require. We also know that various states, depending upon what state you're in, or if your organization happens to be bordering multiple states, You have to understand what those state statutes require by way of credentialing. We also understand that there is healthcare legislation that's indeed going to guide what our practices are going to be. An example would be the National Practitioner Data Bank. We're required as credentialing professionals to query the data bank, and that's a result of a law that was enacted on a federal basis. We also know that there are specific case laws that have impacted how we perform credentialing and to the level of degree we investigate our red flags or incomplete applications. So case law indeed will also impact how we perform credentialing. And then understanding what accreditation body or bodies are dictating your practices. And lastly, the governance documents that guide your procedures. So it might be bylaws, rules and regs, policies, contracts, whatever your administrative documents are that describe your credentialing policies and procedures. So closing up, the important aspect of credentialing is really understanding the do's and don'ts of the rules that are impacting your credentialing practices. So let's talk now about where credentialing is done. As I reveal these to you, you can certainly track with them. Oh yes, when I send a query, I know that I'm querying a CVO, or I know the CVO is querying a hospital, or perhaps an ambulatory center. But understanding that where you're currently working is just one piece of the big geographic puzzle that exists regarding credentialing. So as we move forward and as we expand our knowledge in credentialing, know that there's so many areas or arenas where credentialing is being done. And so if you're in a specific organization now, reach out to a colleague who may be at another organization to find out how their practices differ. So hospitals are going to be the highest populated area where you're going to find credentialing experts. CVOs, I would say, would be the next by physician population. And then managed care organizations for sure. Ambulatory care or specialty facilities may be another. And the largest growing area where I see certified MSPs or credentialing experts move into the space would be physicians' office practices, whether they're employed physicians or whether they're community physicians. This is a growing opportunity area for credentialing professionals. And then being able to do work and their verifications remotely. And in particular, another area that I see expanding would be requests being made of me by physician offices and multi-specialty physician offices saying, hey Donna, I am responsible for the overall credentialing within this doctor group. I really don't have sufficient time, nor does my practice group right now want to hire staff to fill out all of our applications for medical staff membership or reapplications to continue medical staff membership. Would that be a service that you could provide for us? So if you're currently doing credentialing and you're thinking about, oh, you know what, maybe if I have some work, I have some extra time, I'd love to do some work remotely, that might be an area where you may want to reach out to some physician groups and ask. if that's a service that they'd be interested in perhaps partnering with you on. And then expanding too. And I just know if we had the ability to talk with one another right now, we would hear very unique areas where you're currently performing credentialing that we hadn't even thought of. But what I tried to capture here are the key ones that I interact with when I'm in the field, where I will get calls from our colleagues, our credentialing colleagues, and explaining, that they are performing credentialing. So now that we understand the where, it's really important to ask the question, and really from a credentialing career potential, to answer the question, who am I? And this next series of slides is going to give you just a flavor of position titles that I've encountered in the field, where I personally may know these individuals, but I've also verified through LinkedIn. So if you're not already our participant or registered on LinkedIn, I encourage you to do so, create a profile, because you can find all kinds of interesting statistical information on LinkedIn. The most prevalent job title that I see in the industry is credentialing coordinator. Now it does, as we go through this list, it doesn't devalue what you're currently doing, and it doesn't negate the importance of whatever you're being called in your organization. But I think to answer the question, who am I, we as peers have to know what else is happening out there in the industry, so we can potentially make some changes that will benefit us and potentially even help your organization. And I can give you an example in that regard. Over the last couple of years, in partnership primarily with symplr and Cactus, I and a colleague have been doing programs regarding payer enrollment. And as a result of our educational series, I can't tell you, I'm sure it's over 50. I have gotten calls and emails from our colleagues who are saying, gosh, Donna, when I participated in the webinar, I thought for sure I was doing credentialing because that's what my job title says. But I can tell now that I do understand that there is a difference between credentialing and payer enrollment. And so they were able to take the information shared on the webinar series to their administrators, and many of them have been able to influence change within their organizations by job title or position title changes. So that's the importance of us really understanding, who are we? Where do we fit into the big world of credentialing? The second most prevalent position title that I see in the industry is credentialing specialist. And usually where I see that term is in CVOs, but maybe, not exclusively. I will see individuals who are working in hospitals or in a physician's office also be referred to as a specialist. So really consider, as we go through this list, if there's a position title that maybe feels better for you or maybe fits your role more accurately. And some of you might be thinking, gosh, Don, I really don't have any control over what my job title or position title may be. And that may be true in some circumstances, but maybe not in all circumstances. And you know me, I'm the perpetual optimist. If you don't ask, you'll never know. So the worst that they could say is no. So I always like to say, hey, do your homework, prepare yourself, and ask the question. All right, Senior Credentialing Specialist. I see that job title or position title. This particular organization really narrowed or targeted that task of the professional. Yes, they do verifications, so Credentials Verification Coordinator. And then other position titles I see are Director of Credentialing Excellence. I really responded to that one as I was doing research. I don't know of anyone. Obviously, there's someone who has this job title and maybe others, but I personally don't know of anyone. This is something that I was actually able to validate off of the LinkedIn research. And then Manager of Credentialing Services, I often see that one. But let's talk a little bit further, the Credentialing Specialist Lead. And remember when I first started off, I told you some of the low-hanging fruit and changes had to do with more specialization. So Credentialing Specialist Lead. Then we move into Credentialing and Provider Enrollment Coordinator. And as many of you may recall, provider enrollment for those experienced credentialing professionals within hospitals, within health systems, they are being asked to take on the responsibility of provider or payer enrollment. So they have then explained to me, if I'm going to be doing a whole nother aspect of project management, I wanted my job title to accurately reflect that. Advanced Practice Senior Credentials Coordinator. Now this one is interesting, and I actually know this person. They started off in a hospital. They moved into a CVO, their health systems CVO, Credentials Verification Organization, and what they focus their energies on is really understanding the nuance of all of the advanced practice professionals. So again, because this area of expertise or specialty is becoming more specific, we're going to see more and more of these practitioners into our credentialing space, but into healthcare in general because of the shortage of physicians. Again, that area of expertise has really proved valuable to organizations. Medical Staff Credentialing Coordinator, and I see those position titles primarily in hospitals. And then National Director of Credentialing is a whole nother area. Think about what you're doing. Are your credentialing practices representing an organization? Are they representing one organization, a network of organizations, a system? So reflect on the tasks, your scope of responsibility, and where actually you could take that position. Other position titles. Before we move into where I'm seeing some shifts, we're looking at the Implementation Credentialing Coordinator. Interesting title. They actually implement. They're going to be responsible for implementing all things relative to credentialing regulations. Director of Credentials and Qualifications, that was, I do know this person as well, and they're at an academic center. So think about that if you're currently housed and working in one of those facilities. And using these position titles also in your search for job positions, type in keywords, or as you're moving into the interview stage, listen to how they're describing this position. Potentially think about how that position title could be changed, and maybe that could be a negotiation point for you. Director of Credentialing and Business Configuration. This is another one that I got off of LinkedIn, but interesting. I wonder what that scope of responsibilities that colleague may have. Operations Manager of Credentialing and Payer Enrollment. Operations Manager of Credentialing, Logistics, and Privileging. Thought that was an interesting job title, position title. And then Senior Lead Coordinator of Credentialing, Payer Enrollment. So the last group of position titles I want to show you before we move into the shifts in credentialing really target about how our world in medical staff services continues to expand and how the value of credentialing is equaled to many other functions that are being performed within the healthcare setting. We're looking at Physician Credentials Verification Coordinator. We saw on the previous slide that the Advanced Practice Coordinator has a specific title. This particular one is focused on physician credentialing. Manager of Credentialing and Onboarding. And that whole function of onboarding has become very systemized, and this particular credentialing professional has made sure that that expanded function becomes a part of their job title. Credentialing Software Product Management. Again, a lot of MSPs are moving into the software world, and they can truly become the experts for the building or the management or the nuances and upgrades to that software, for the client's benefit, the software upgrades for the client's benefit. And then lastly, of current position titles that I'm seeing relative to the whole credentialing world and how it's beginning to change is Provider Data Management and Credentialing Specialist. And again, we're looking at the payer enrollment, and not only payer enrollment, but also the analysis of data. More and more MSPs are moving into the informatics aspect of credentialing management. How can we present data or statistics to our administrative and medical staff leaders that really speak value to that organization? So they again are making informed decisions. So let's talk then about where credentialing positions and the practice of credentialing is expanding. And I think that the next couple of slides will be opportunities for you to think, okay, this is where I currently am, but this is how potentially I could be moving in this direction, and then evaluating what steps do I need to take in order to get there. So we're talking about a credentialing and concierge coordinator. I actually know someone who has this job title, and truly the concierge in this particular facility, they are really wanting to communicate to that practitioner, you are important to us. The customer service that we're going to be delivering to you matters. So from the point of first contact with that organization all the way through the recruitment, if it's an employed physician, the recruitment, the signing of the contract, the credentialing, the payer enrollment, and the onboarding piece, that individual, that MSP or credentialing professional is the point person for that physician or practitioner. Interesting concept, right? Then we're talking about an application specialist. Remember, I mentioned as I was describing to you low-hanging fruit and opportunities of remote work. I am getting more and more calls from physician offices asking, Donna, can you please help me shepherd the process of application completion, not only for hospital credentialing, but also for managed care and payer enrollment. So again, an opportunity, a shift, and just because I'm getting more requests, I don't want to say it's a trend, but it is definitely a shift that I am seeing. And then another area of shift is really the growing areas of specialization. What does that look like, Donna? What might some of those be? Again, let's look at this, colleagues, as opportunities. Where are you now, but where do you want to go? An initial application specialist. If you want to focus your attention and you want to be the master of every new application that comes into your facility, think about that as a potential job growth for yourself. If you're currently doing new initial or initial applications, but you know your skill sets could be sharper in the reappointment area, potentially looking at reapplication specialist and see actually what that's meaning for you, right? And then a credentialing software super user. And even if there are only, well, potentially there could just be one person in your department, because you have to wear all different types of hats of expertise. So it would not be inappropriate for you to refer to yourself as a super user as you're applying for positions. But if you have more than one person in your department and someone who really likes technology and can navigate through that software, that credentialing software really well, think about identifying yourself as that software super user. Many of our organizations, especially the larger ones, especially CVOs, they already have identified someone in that capacity. But if you're not currently labeling someone in that way, think about that. Or if you know they're really good at the technical components of credentialing, having discussions about whether or not that would be an area of interest for them to expand. A credentialing audit specialist, again, matching skill sets with your passion, with the areas of expertise, with areas of need that your organization may have. There truly are some organizations who have identified someone exclusively to perform audits because managed care requires there be validation of the process that's being used, and any best practice medical staff services department or CVO indeed would want to be auditing their process. So again, that's another potential area of specialization you might want to move into. Compliance specialist, because we do know there is such a focus to make sure that our practices that we're performing are indeed compliant and accurate. Well, how better to do that than to have someone who really understands the ins and outs. So if there is a change within a standard, they go to every person in their department that is going to touch and discuss how their practices need to change in order to remain compliant. Now, I'm going to pause here for just a moment before I reveal the next couple, because there might be some of you that are in my listening audience and thinking, gosh, Donna, you know, I work in a medical staff services department, and yes, we all kind of do a little bit of all of these things that you've described. It sounds a little maybe corny to identify areas of specialization. And remember, anytime I give a webinar, you have to toss what doesn't feel right to you and investigate things that really touch you, not only from your heart, but intellectually touch you as well. Yes, those of us working in medical staff services, we have to be sort of the jack of all trade, but I'm describing to you where I see shifts in the field, and specialization is indeed a shift that I'm seeing. Also, temporary privilege. Those credentialing experts who, in particular CVOs, who manage all temporary privileges. Because there are nuances, right? There are red flags that exist that we really, really need to be careful as we're looking at those who are applying for temporary privileges, those special cause situations, or those one-time only. But also temporary practitioners, docs who are brought in because of a shortage, perhaps in emergency medicine or in the ICU, or a gastro physician is on holiday. So there again are nuances when we're looking at how we're managing those practitioners in your process for locum tenens. And then any time, and again I'm seeing this in a CVO, anytime an application specialist or a reapplication specialist hits a red flag, they indeed do pursue the red flag. However, they bump it to the red flag specialist at that CVO to be sure that every aspect of that red flag has indeed been validated, because the goal for that particular CVO is they don't want to move information forward to a client, to a medical staff services department, who then moves it on to administration and medical staff leaders, so they're making an ill-informed decision. They want to make sure it's been properly and thoroughly vetted. And then someone within your organization that truly has an understanding of the managed care environment. Now, this position kind of has been around for quite a while in CVOs, because there are a lot of delegated contracts that go into a CVO, but is the job title or the position and the scope of work that person is performing, has it been narrowed and delineated in that way? Just food for thought. Also, any application that comes through that needs to be expedited. There are also factors that can be considered, that someone who has expertise in expediting them through your board process, your MEC process, making sure that, again, it's been properly vetted. So with those shifts and the expansion of our opportunities and of career changes that you might be considering, let's look at what we can do within our current positions as we're reflecting on what's happening out there in the field. Let's look truly at what you want to do in order to brand your area of expertise. You definitely, as I mentioned, you definitely want to research the information that I'm sharing through through this webcast to validate it for yourself. I would hate for you to ever take anyone's verbatim word, because sometimes we all misspeak. But I can tell you what I've shared with you has indeed been my experience, what I'm seeing in the field, as well as my research. So if you are considering that a position title change would be appropriate, or at least put into a proposal for consideration, you sure want to brand your title. Find one that really is going to track with the scope of work that you're doing. You want to get business cards. We, as an organization, Medical Staff Services, that seems like a no-brainer, but I'm currently working with a client who none of the MSPs in a Medical Staff Services department has business cards. The reason, when I've talked to administration, is that from a budget standpoint, they really don't need to get business cards. So that's the rule right now in this particular administration. So what I'm saying to staff, and I got this okayed to administration, do you have any problem, I said to administration, if they develop their own business cards? And there's so many softwares right now that allow our colleagues to create their own business cards. And of course, you want to make sure that any branding that you're putting on that card, any logos, are indeed the hospital-approved logos. I would also suggest that once you get the business card, you just run it by administration to be sure that, hey, they're A-OK, that you're going to start using business cards. But truly, what I'm seeing in the industry, there seems to be a reversal of that practice, where business cards, we work so hard to get business cards, and I was, for many years, I was seeing not a void, but I am now beginning to see more organizations not approving business cards for their team of professionals in the medical staff services department. What might be other things that you can do? Well, as a credentialing professional, you always want to be on the learning edge. Be on the leading edge of what's happening in our industry by the rule makers, by your practices, how you can actually improve a process, and how do we improve our process. If you think you've got it mastered and you're meeting timelines, your customers are all happy, well, you want to network and make sure geographically you are really in the leading edge within your geographical group, or expand nationally and see what other folks are doing, because we can all always learn and do better just in talking with one another. All of these things allow us to sometimes create our own job opportunities, right? You just never know what might spark an idea. If you can all walk away with one thing from this webcast that will help propel your career, your thought process, give you that boost of confidence that you needed, then the job has been done well for you. Other things that you can do, as I mentioned with regards to shifts, more and more automation. The more you can master the technologies that are available to you in your work environments, the more valuable you're going to be to your organization. You want to make sure your practices are automated to the best practice available. You want to make sure your verifications and how you notify your practitioners. Many organizations are still sending out a formal letter. They mail the letter of notification that, yes, you have been appointed to the medical staff, and they include a copy of the clinical privilege forms. More and more organizations, I'm going to have automated that process via email. We want to make sure, and this is an area, and actually when I was presenting in Alaska just a couple of months ago, I had a light bulb moment. I can't say right now that I will never be without my paper calendar, because for me, that tangible product makes it much more meaningful and real to me in order to meet my deadlines and coordinate my project and client work. However, through the discussion at the Alaska State meeting, I realized that for me, how I'm utilizing my calendar to help on my day-to-day obligations, I've just scratched the surface. So I have definitely some developmental opportunities to take for myself, and I'm just planting that seed for other colleagues who may not be aware of the depth of capability that your calendar within your organization's product, how that can help truly streamline many of your work practices, and in particular, keeping track of some of your credentialing prompts. Other things that you can do, again, to get noticed in a good way to help accelerate your credentialing career. I taught and this was several years back, but I was teaching a NAM certification program during one of the breaks. And if you happen to be a listener, please, I don't mean any offense. I'm using this as a teachable moment for others. When you're taking one of the NAM certification programs, there's a lot of interactive exercises. During the first break, my colleague came to me and she said, "Gosh, Donna, I'm not really comfortable with all of this teamwork. I'm going to leave at lunchtime and I'm not going to come back. I really have to think about whether or not I'm ready to take this certification exam." I totally respected what she was saying. I don't personally agree with that thought process, but I respected her experience. But it told me how she works within her organization, or how she's being limited in her organization. So I'm offering you opportunities to expand and taking that risk. The younger workforce, the younger credentialing, and younger by age, I'm speaking about the age of the MSP or the credentialing professional that's coming into our industry, they are all about collaboration. The expectation of healthcare organizations is that we better learn to work together from within our own departments, but from department to department and to our external clients and stakeholders. So how we participate and how we work together, we are being evaluated and judged on that. So truly, I'm encouraging you, if you're not currently doing this, participate at staff meetings. If you've been assigned to a task force, accept that responsibility. Participate and become members of your local, state, and national NAMS organizations and participate in leadership meetings. But not only actively participate, but please think about giving presentations. I know if you're not comfortable doing that, it can be a very scary proposition, but I am before you as someone who used to have that thought process. And yes, you still get butterflies before you have to give a presentation. And all the research that I've done told me that when you stop getting butterflies, it means it's time to retire or quit the business. So thank God I still get butterflies, but truly, think about giving presentations. Brand yourself as the expert in your organization. So you might want to give a presentation at a credentials committee about potentially a new rule or a new regulation that's coming through, a new state law, some colleague that you've heard that their organization was involved in a negligent credentialing case. So we can truly help continue to educate our medical staff leaders. Or think about giving a regular presentation at an MEC meeting about some of those same topics. At a board meeting, administrative leadership meetings, giving them an overview of the things that you're doing within your department and all of the activities that you're responsible for. If there are leadership retreats that physicians are being invited to participate, and it might be a Horty Springer or it may be a Greeley program, ask to attend those meetings with your medical staff leaders. Or if it's retreats that you're planning to host at your facility on behalf of your medical staff leaders, again, make sure you're part of that agenda. And participating, if you're not currently part of the onboarding or orientation process within your organization, I strongly encourage you to get on the agenda to indeed participate in that regard, so your value to your organization becomes much more dynamic and less one-dimensional. Now, let's look at, and my program today is really going to close out the tips that I'm hearing specifically from the field, from administrators in all work environments. I offered to you as we entered into this webcast areas of importance that pertain to the credentialing professional. But that is one aspect of our development. We have to also understand how we're being perceived by administration. So, through surveys, which have been validated by administrators when I go on site, these are some of their tips on how MSPs, and in relation to this topic, credentialing professionals can make themselves as valuable as possible to their organization. We have to be open to new ideas, new technologies, new ways of doing our business. We have to be demonstrating flexibility for sure. Flexibility, again, allows others to see us as being willing to change. Being able to adapt to change and not only take that idea, but how can I bump it up a notch? How can I truly use my knowledge, my skills, and my ability to demonstrate my competence to really push innovation in your organization and take risks? Just as the graphic shows, color outside the lines. We don't know unless we try. And oops, excuse me, let me go to one other. I believe there's others. We want to be able to show results for sure. We want to also be creative, and we want to be able to demonstrate our results to our administration and medical staff leaders because it makes us more valuable. We want to be able to focus on what are our customers, what do the stakeholders of our particular organization, what are their needs, what are their pain points that you can really respond to them and make little changes to make their life a little bit more comfortable. I recently participated in a survey at a client about the pain that's happening actually within the entire healthcare arena as it relates to physicians. I'm telling you, colleagues, and it's very concerning. I don't want to say it's an epidemic, but the research that I'm doing is pointing in that direction about the number of physician suicides in the last couple of years, many of them attributed to the increasing regulation, the electronic health record, and how that has significantly impacted how they are able to practice medicine and the time that they spend with their patients. So there's greater dissatisfaction by physicians. So if we can, just by hearing what their need is, if we can help make their day a little better, I say let's try it. Also, we want to be able, as I've mentioned a couple of times, be able to embrace, but not only embrace technology, but really be the masters of automation within our organizations. We want to validate that what we're doing is indeed a best practice, or at least it's a competitive practice. And so you have to be able to validate that by contacting peers, by doing benchmarking and networking with your colleagues. We want to be able to express with confidence our own opinions, right? We don't want to continue to do the status quo if we know that there's a better way to do it and our first suggestion wasn't well received. Take a few steps back, think of a new approach or a new strategy, but it's okay to have a different opinion, always respecting the people in power because they're the ones who make the rules. We want to be able to promote teamwork and back from mistakes. Don't drag down your level of confidence because you've made a mistake. Figure out what you learned from that mistake and then move on. You want to be able to identify what your core functions are and then expand your technologies, your techniques, and your practices to make you as competent as possible. Administrators really want to see that you're being a change agent, you're pushing, you're influencing change. And again, your participation during today's webinar is doing just that. This is evidence of how you care. And then align department goals with organizational goals. It's critical to have career goals, but making sure that your career goals are indeed possible with the department goals and your organizational goals that they have established. Again, being creative and demonstrating your value is your major takeaway from today's webinar. So the next logical perspective that you might answer after getting all of this good, deep, timely, and contemporary information would be, Donna, what is my next step? And really, I want to leave you with the power thought, because the next step with regards to accelerating your credentialing career, I've offered all kinds of opportunities, suggestions, tips, industry shifts, areas of caution, but really the next step is yours to take. And when we continue to work together, like we do through these webinar series, in our conversations with one another, we really have the power to change things first with ourselves and then with our departments and organizations. And it might not be as quickly as any of us would like, but the beauty is that we do currently have the ability to change things that we find displeasure in or a lack of satisfaction in. So you got the power, peeps. All right, I'm going to close my formal presentation there. I'm going to ask you to jot down on your calendar for our next webinar. And we're kind of flipping back now. We focused on credentialing, and now we want to look again at enrollment. So what really would be the benefits of outsourcing your enrollment practices? If you currently aren't involved in enrollment, again, this might be a way to expand your knowledge base because it's happening in the industry. We can't look the other way. Or if you know someone who is currently doing enrollment and they are seeking some additional information, please ask them to contact either myself or symplr Cactus. They certainly will get them started down the right road. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Callie, so she has a couple of words of wisdom for you all.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. Now we're going to talk about how symplr and Cactus can help you out in terms of this program's content. We offer provider credentialing. For medical credentialers, we provide easy online application for providers, automated expiration monitoring and sanction screening, dynamic customizable forms and letters, automated workflows, and also powerful reporting, along with many other features. If this sounds like something that your facility could benefit from having, or you yourself could benefit from utilizing, please email us at sales@symplr.com. I would like to reiterate one more time that we will be sending out the slides and the ability for you to watch this webcast recording soon. If you will add communications@symplr.com to your address book, you will definitely receive that. We will also be sending out your CE certificates in a separate email from the communications@symplr email address. So please add that to your workbook or your address book. Ms. Donna, we only had 3 questions come in, so I'm going to let you reach out to those people individually since we're out of time today.
Okay.
Is there anything you would like to say in closing to our wonderful audience?
No, just thanks again for your wonderful participation every webinar. Our attendance is it's quite impressive how our colleagues continue to come together. The interest is definitely there. So We, meaning symplr, Cactus, and myself, we will continue to partner and provide you timely and contemporary information that can make your jobs and your careers as satisfying as you desire.
Alrighty, well thank you, Ms. Donna, and thank you to everyone who joined us. Again, please check our website. We do have all of our upcoming webcasts on there, and you can go ahead and register for the ones that we have with Donna and the ones that we have on a couple of other topics as well at symplr.com. That is all we have for today, so thank you for joining us, and we hope to see y'all next time. Have a great day.